Hello students. In the last lecture, we have seen what is a user requirement, what are user requirements, and what are the system requirements. Right? User requirement is the abstract statement, whereas the system requirements are the detailed statements of the requirements. Now, all these user requirement and system requirement, and if they are put together in a formal manner into a document, and this becomes actually part of the agreement between the developers team and the customer. Okay, and this is basically software requirement document. So software requirement basically contains both user requirement and the system requirement. Now this is not a design document. This is not how to develop the system. This document is all about what is expected from the system. However, such system requirement documents are considered to be irrelevant for the Agile methods, because in the Agile method it is assumed that the software, the requirements changes very quickly for those softwares which are to be developed for the Agile methods. So, whenever a software is being developed, the requirements very rapidly expires. Actually, the requirement changes very rapidly. So there is no meaning of actually creating a formal document. However, thus there are actually the requirement documents are necessary for those systems which requires pre-delivery analysis. That is, the example is the critical systems, and of course the big systems which are developed in several teams. So there are many softwares where requirement document preparation becomes essential. There are many users for the system requirement document, and those different stakeholders of the system use the requirement document from different perspectives. They use for different purposes. Okay, uh, some of the users of the requirement documents are the system customers, managers, system engineer, system test engineer, system maintenance engineer. So as you can see, system customer, they basically they are the customers of the system. They are non-technical people who are the end users of the system. So basically, they specify the requirements, and because they requirements are basically gathered from them, they specify the requirements, and later on they read this document to understand whether the software is going to meet their needs or not, whether the software has all the facilities they have specified. Okay, so managers are the another category of people who use the requirement document. So use the requirement documents to plan a bid for the system and to plan the system development process. So they are basically managers are the managers of the developer team. So they use the requirement document to plan a bid for the system and to plan the system development process, how to proceed with the development process. Okay. Another set of people who use the requirement document is the system engineers. So use the requirement document to understand what system is to be developed. So basically, the technical peoples, they need to read this document to understand what they need to develop for the customers. The They are the real developers who does the coding under manager. Now, system test engineer are the testing people. They need to test the software to understand that all the facilities specified by the customers are developed, okay, are incorporated into the system. Okay, so they need to write the test cases based on the requirements specified by the customers. So another set of people are the system maintenance engineer. They are the people who will be maintaining the software after the system is delivered at the customer side. So they need to understand the proper understanding how the system was developed to keep their maintenance process. So for that, they need to understand the system, and therefore they need to go through the system requirement document. So these are different categories of people who need to go through this system requirement or this requirement document. Okay. The contents of the requirement document basically varies from system to system. The type of system for which the requirement documents needs to be prepared, okay, and the approach that is used in the development process. Now, For the incremental systems, that means the agile software development, the requirement documents is not that detailed. Very less detail is given in requirement documents. Now, requirement documents basically has there has been standards that are set for the requirement documents, preparation of requirement documents. One of the common standard is the IEEE standard. Okay, so uh, so basically these kind of standards are used for the preparation of requirement documents for large software projects. This table basically describes the structure of requirement document. It's an overall structure. So these are the common elements which remains in a formal requirement document. So first part, that is the one of the component, the requirement document should be the preface. Preface basically describe the expected readerships, okay, define the expected readerships of the document and describe the version history, okay, including a rationale for the creation of the new version and a summary of the changes made in each version. So why a new version is required, the rationale should be provided in the preface itself, and the summary of the changes made for the new version. Okay. So basically, it includes the version history. So introduction is what it actually describes actually why a system is needed. Okay, and briefly describe the system functions and explain how it will describe how it will work with the other systems. So it will basic functionalities of the system are described in the introduction, and the interaction of the system with the other system is also described in the introduction itself. Okay. So basically it describes about how this software system is going to fit into overall business or strategy objective of the organization commissioning the software. So, how is this software going to fit with the overall business model, or how is it going to fit to the organization that is commissioning the software? Is also described in the introduction part itself. Glossary is basically the third component. But glossary is basically the description of the technical terms in a document. Okay, so technical terms are described in the glossary. Then comes the user requirements definition. So the services provided for the users are described in this particular section. Okay, the non-functional system requirement should also be described in this section. So this description may use actually natural language, diagram, and other notations that are understandable to the customers. So both functional and non-functional requirements are described in this particular section, user requirement definition, by using natural language, diagram, and other notations that are easily understandable to the customers. Okay. System architecture, this component, this chapter should actually present the high-level overview of the anticipated system architecture. So, if a big system is going to be developed, then it should give a high-level architecture of the overall system. Okay, it should give a diagram of the overview of the anticipated system that is going to be developed, the software system. Okay, showing the distribution of functions across the system modules. That is how the functions are going to interact with different functional modules. Okay, uh, and if any architectural components are reused, that also should be highlighted in this particular part. Then comes the system requirement specification. System requirement specification basically describes the functional and non-functional requirements in more detail. Okay, so uh, more further detail of the non-functional requirements may be added, and if any interface is being designed, has to be designed to the other system, that should also be defined in this particular chapter. Similarly, system models. System models are the graphical system models showing the relationship between system components and the system and its environment. So example of possible models like the object model, data flow model, semantic data model. Okay, um, we can say the object model like context model, or we can say the uh, sequence diagram, class diagram. Okay, all these are basically um, part of the system model. System evolution. Uh, System evolution is that actually describes the fundamental assumption on which the system is based. Okay, and any anticipated changes that due to hardware evolution that is expected from the system, or changing user needs that may arise, because of which some um, enhancement of the systems may need to be done in future. All those description needs to be given in the system evolution part. This section is useful for system designers as it may help them to avoid the design decision that would constrain likely future changes in the system. So, with the system evolution chapter describes all those likely changes that may come in the future, and that actually help the designer. This particular chapter help the designer to take certain steps so that future enhancements of the software becomes easy. Appendices actually provides the detailed specific information that is related to the application being developed. Okay, so by going through the appendices, anybody can understand the components of the system. So most of the terms are being described in the appendices. So for example, hardware and database description. Hardware requirement define the minimal and optimal configuration for the system. Database requirement defines the logical organization of the data used by the system and the relationship between data. All these are described in the appendices. So by going through the appendices, anyone involved with the systems, maybe the people who are maintenance people or who use the for testing the systems, they can easily understand the exactly what is the kind of configuration required for the system, what are the relationship of the data, that is the logical, that is the structure of the database. Okay, all this they can easily understand by going through the description given in the appendices. Similarly, index is several index to the documents can be included. Index means all like those parts, where is the table numbering, okay, figure numbering, all these things, all this can be included there. So they may be done in the alphabetical index by normal alphabetical index. Okay, so there may be index of diagrams, index of functions, and so on. So those may be, so by going through the index, people can easily understand where a particular table exists, or where a diagram exists, or where a which chapter where a particular function is there. All these things can be easily found out by going through the append indexes. So these are different chapters, components of the requirement document. Now, requirement specification is basically process of writing down the users, that is the system requirements in the requirement document. Okay, user requirements has to be have to be understandable by the end users. So they are basically non-technical terms are used for writing the user requirements because they have to be understood by the customers who do not have any technical knowledge. But system requirements are the detailed specification of the user requirements, and their system requirements can include some technical details. Okay, so some technical information. So both these requirements, this user requirement as well as system requirement, they becomes the part of the requirement document, and and actually this requirement may be part of the contract deal between the customer and the developer team, okay, the software development firm. So these requirements that are specified in the system requirement document should be as complete as possible. There should not be any imprecise uh, requirements there in the document. Okay. There should be complete documents, complete requirements should be specified. Okay. Here we are going to discuss about the different ways of writing the system requirement specification. So there can be different ways in which the requirements can be specified in the requirement document. So one of the very useful way is the natural language. Natural language means where you write in a numbered sentences, giving the some sequence numbers, and then you specify the requirements one by one. Okay, so each of these sentences with a particular number should specify one requirement. So similarly, there are some structured natural language can also be used, like pseudocode. Okay, so there are some the standard forms which may be available where you can write this um, in a structured natural language, but that is actually that this provide information about the aspects of the each of these field actually provide the information about the aspect of the requirements. So design description language. This approach actually uses language like a programming language, but with more abstract features to specify the requirements by defining an operational model of the system. Uh, though this actually approach is now rarely used for writing the requirement document. So graphical notations are the graphical notations. Graphical symbols are used um, to show different requirements. Okay. So normally the UML diagrams like use case diagram, sequence diagrams are used for this type of graphical notations. Mathematical specification where the description are given in some mathematical concepts such as finite state machine or sets. Okay, so this makes an unambiguous specification that can reduce actually ambiguity of the requirement document when the mathematical notations are used. So, but problem is that most of the customers they do not understand such mathematical specification. Okay, so if something is written which has finite state machine or sets, the customer won't be able to understand actually whether their requirements are being specified there or not. Even though it is included in there, but may not be able to understand such symbolic terms. So they may feel reluctant to accept the system contract. But then with the mathematical specification, the requirements can be um, specified very clearly in unambiguous terms. Okay. So these are different ways to represent the uh, documents, to specify the requirements in the requirement document.